Alright, so, once again, I'm going to be doing more on the kind of topic in Earthbound of sort of tying up loose ends, and this is just one thing that probably most people aren't going to, a good few people might find completely interesting or completely BS. As I was going through the game's end credits, I just kind of noticed it, and I was like, you know what, I think that would be something worth talking about, because it made me think about it, so, like, why not? But when I was going through the credits, I was trying to look at some of the names and stuff for the people that were going by. Personally, maybe for somebody else it might stick out, but most of them really didn't stick out to me as anything, like, particularly interesting or, like, eye-popping or anything. But the thing that did get me thinking was the actual photos that are appearing or going by in the background as the names are going by and everything, the credits. These are photos that are taken by this character in the game called the Photo Man, who is this weird character who just, every once in a while you go by a certain landmark, you pass a certain trigger point, or like basically a invisible sand in the line for the game. He'll come down randomly, basically based on like certain landmarks and stuff. He'll take a picture, he'll take a photo, and then it's assumed that at the end of the game, he shows you the photo album that he was taking the entire time throughout your adventure or whatever. The interesting thing I found about these photos, I'll talk about after I show the actual credits. So, like usual, I'll show you the credits or whatever. I'll show you the gameplay, which is just this credit sequence. This part I would say you really don't have to watch if you don't want to, but, you know, it's kind of interesting. The music is nice. You know, you can feel free to skip it. I'll have the chapters in the description or whatever, so if you want to pass by it. But after that, I'll actually talk about my thing that I found interesting specifically about this whole sequence, so I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so, as you probably saw, as these credits are going by, if you want to look at the names and see if you can see anything that pops out to you, for me, none of them popped out as anything, like, particularly, special, but the main thing that popped out to me was all the photos going by. Now, if you weren't the one playing the game, you wouldn't really have much to get from this, I would say, just because, you assume, well, maybe that's what the scene looked like in the picture when it was taken or whatever, as you were going by those landmarks and such. But when you actually have played the game and gone to these spots, these places, you will quickly realize, like, almost all these photos, it's either you never were actually there and that photo was never taken when you were playing the game, like you never went by that area, so the photo is there, but it was never actually taken, for one. Two, some of the photos that you did have taken don't show up in this credit sequence. And three, for a lot of these photos, basically all of them, there is just slight differences in what the photo looked like when you originally had it taken in-game compared to what it looks like in the photo shown here. Like, yeah, I know it sounds completely stupid and ridiculous, like I'm reading way too much into it, and maybe I am, but still, I'm going to talk about it anyway. It makes me think of, the Mandela effect. Like, some people out there would think that the Mandela effect, the whole thing of it, is completely BS, but as I've said before, I think I am kind of one of those people that thinks that this place is completely like a fluid reality, whatever you want to say. It's a completely fluid realm. Like, things can change here and there overnight, like, completely. There's not, like, any kind of rules or whatever that, like, we have quote-unquote rules here, but almost all of them can be broken in some way, because that's how I think that this place works. Like, it's not some solid place that everything... I never watched Dark City or saw the movie Dark City, but basically like that. Like, stuff can change, not even overnight, just like between moments, if they happen to. Like, there's no restrictions to that. And just like in the movie Back to the Future, where Marty looks at the photo, or his family photo or whatever, he sees it, his parents aren't going to have him or whatever. He sees himself and his siblings disappearing from the photo and stuff. Like, the photo's actually changing in front of his eyes. I don't know. Just for some reason that popped out to me in this sequence is like these photos, you went through the game and you saw these things in these situations, and some of them you didn't, and some that aren't shown here that you did. Most of them are just slightly different than what you would have remembered if you were actually like there getting the photo taken or whatever. I know it sounds ridiculous because it's like, well, it's just a game restriction, duh. They just have the screenshots and they're just showing to you. Like, come on, man. But hey, I don't believe this place has any coincidences, like I said. And it just makes me think of that whole idea of the things being slightly different than what you remember, or them actually slightly changing from what you remember. And most people would distrust their own senses and say, oh, well, I just didn't remember right, or I didn't remember, my memory's faulty and such like that. They would doubt themselves. But me, I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend like my memory is 100% accurate and everything, but I will basically never doubt myself anymore again, like I used to, all the time. Like, doubting myself, doubting my memory, doubting my everything. This sequence just reminded me of that whole concept of the Mandela effect. Like, these photos that you're going through, they are just slightly different than what you actually remember. Most people would say, like, oh, well, maybe my cat was orange or something like that. Maybe my carpet was red instead of green in my childhood house or something like that. But then when you really get into this whole idea, it's like, no, I do remember it was different back then, or whatever you want to say. The current reality does not reflect what I remember, what I know it was back then, back in that timeline or whatever, that time frame, that point in my existence on this realm, whatever, in this incarnation. So, for many people, probably very silly, but still, I think it was worth mentioning, just kind of a weird thing that I realized from the credits of this with all the photos and everything. And very few games really do this, I feel, where maybe they started doing it more often, but this game was probably one of the first where it kind of was like, okay, we're just going to be knowingly taking pictures of all these things throughout the game, and then later on showing you them as like a memory sort of deal. But yeah, just something, I wanted to talk about there. And yeah, at least in that little section, that's all I really wanted to talk about with the credits. Like, at the start of the credits, it shows you all the characters, their sprites, what they're named and such like that, just to give you like, oh, like, by the way, you're seeing all these sprites and everything in the game, these characters. So that's cool. And then right after after the credits where it's showing all the staff members and the names and everything in the photos I just talked about. After that, it shows the beginning sequence of the game again, basically. But this time, instead of Pokey coming to the door, it's his brother. And he basically gives you a letter that's like saying, hey, come get me, loser, from Pokey, just as a, basically a teasing that, oh yeah, they're making another game in the series or whatever kind of a deal for the sequel, which in the US they would have never had, technically, never officially released, but in Japan they did eventually get the sequel, Mother 3. But yeah, just that little credits, I wanted to talk about that. Short video, just like the last one. Maybe some of you may not be believers in the fluid reality, the Mandela effect, that kind of thing, or have not experienced it yourself, whatever. But that's what those photos in the background made me think of. The fact that they're just slightly off, slightly different. That whole sequence made me think of that, and I was like, hey, might as well make a video tying up loose ends. I'm going to continue on this for a few other things. Yeah, but as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.